This build is going to be very similar to that of the Executor with a couple of twists. And by that I mean the status ailments build up and taking advantage of every single status ailment at the same time as you can. The only one downside about this build is that there's a couple of enemies and a couple of bosses, not that many in this game, that are going to be resistant to a certain type of elemental ailment or status ailment, whether if it's bleeding or poison or rot or frost, what have you, but there's basically not going to be any enemy at all that is going to be resistant at all of them at the same time. At least I believe so. And there's a little bit of a twist because this is a very powerful build that I was using as my main with my Executor, but this guy has a little bit of an extra little things that are going to enhance that character build a little bit more. He's going to have more stamina, he's going to have more health, and that is going to be coming from the back passive bonuses, but also because of the actual skill, the active skill that this character has. He is going to have that much more stamina, and if you have a good shield, based and depending on the weapons that you're going to be using, you're going to be poking from behind a shield. You're going to be able to poke from behind a shield with lots of stamina and lots of status ailments. So yeah, this guy is very, very, very powerful because of that effect. So first, we're going to talk about the relics that we're going to be using, then we're going to be talking about the weapons rotation, how are we going to be using those status ailments, how are we going to be using this character. It's actually fairly simple, and this build I planned it for solo, because I mostly play on solo. Most of my expeditions I play on solo. That is not to say that this is not good for playing with friends, but ideally playing with friends you want to be using relics that are going to be enhancing your friends, because this is a character that to some extent is a very very good support character for whenever there's other people out there. Since this is going to be for solo play, this is going to enhance your individual power battle capabilities. That is not to say that you cannot use this build with friends. It's just that you're going to be efficient, battle-wise efficient, and not so much buffing stuff, if you get what I mean. So the goblet, or the vessel that I'm using, it's the Sacred Tree Grail, and this mainly is because of the two yellow slots that we have right in here. I was lucky enough to have a polished luminous scene in here for partial HP restoration upon post-damage attacks. It also gives me alongside that a physical attack up, which is actually kind of nice because we are going to be using physical damage weapons, because the status ailments that we're using are status ailments instead of changing the element base damage of the weapon. So this is a very good one. But any partial HP restoration, it's just fine. It's just that I managed to get a very, very good one right in here. The next two that we're going to be using, they are going to be coming from bosses. One, it's going to be the Knight of the Wise, which is going to increase our maximum FP. The starting armament is going to inflict poison, but it's also going to give us the buff that poison and rot in the vicinity increases attack power, and this does not stack, unfortunately. So it's either poison and rot. Both of them are going to be giving you the attack buff, but it's nice to have them devote of them at the same time on the enemy, because it's a little bit more DPS in the end of the day. So like I mentioned, I'm going to show you how are you going to go about things right in here so that we can manage to get all of the status ailments into the enemies, into the bosses. Then we're going to have the Knight of the Miasma. Frostbite in vicinity conceals yourself. This is very useful for clearing, for example, the castle, whether it is that you're fighting the Earth Tree Knights or you're fighting the regular Earth Trees, especially the Giants, especially useful in the Giants because they're going to give you a breather for them not to throw pots at you. This is very useful if you're playing on solo, like I always play, because this is going to allow you to clear the castle, get those levels that you need for leveling up your character. And he's also going to be needing a little bit of items that some of them you are going to purchase them, some of them you can get them through regular exploration and ruins, but yeah. Now the also amazing thing about this is that it changes the armament skill to Chilling Mist at the start of the expedition. I do not know if the arcane actually makes for you to cause frostbite that much easier, but I found that I frostbite the enemies very, very fast and very, very consistently with this character, so to some extent it maybe has something to do with that. And it's going to also increase your attack power when facing frostbite afflicted enemies. You're going to have the attack power from the Knight of the Wise. Poison rod in the vicinity, increase attack power. You're going to increase your attack power because you have a frozen beaten enemy in front of you. But also remember that frostbite reduces the resistances that the enemy has for damage. Meaning that yes, this is a character that does not have lots of base damage, but if you combine all of these status ailments right in here, not only are you going to be dealing debuff damage and instant frostbite damage, but also increasing your attack power like a maniac so that you can deal as much damage as you can possibly do. This is a very, very powerful build. So the cool thing about it all is that with your starting armament, which is the Scholar thrusting swords, you already have two of the status ailments that we needed. And as a matter of fact, these two guys right in here are going to be more than enough for you to get all of those attack buffs active. But you can actually be combining this with the Anspur Rapier if you manage to get the Anspur Rapier for you to be able to inflict rot upon the enemies as well at the same time. And ideally, how this is going to be working, my advice, like what I advise for you to do is that you first use your character skill, because that is going to give you the stamina buff. Once you have the stamina buff, you can poke easily from behind a shield towards the enemies. Ideally, you want a shield that allows you to use the chilling mist like that, and then you attack from behind a shield. There you already have your poison, and then you change into your Anspur Rapier, and then you already have a poison rod and frostbite upon the enemy. You deal more damage, he takes more damage, so that's actually kind of nice. And you can actually have a third weapon. My advice is that if you're lucky enough to get the bloody healies right in here, that's going to be all of the status ailments at the same time, and that is just so broken, dude. That is just so filthy and disgusting. And whenever like one status build up disappears, all you have to do is like just recast it like this right in here. There we have the poison, here we have the rod as well, and then once you have all of those guys right in there, you change into your bloody healies, and that is going to be causing bleeding upon the enemy. On this gameplay that I have for you right in here, I was unlucky enough, kind of lucky, unlucky, depending on how you take a look at things, to get the Eleonora's Pole Blade. The Eleonora's Pole Blade has fire damage, which is going to immediately take off the frostbitten upon the enemy, allowing you to cast the frostbite again, which is going to deal the raw damage of it. But why do I not advise for you to do so? Because in paper, it sounds like good. First, you're going to have to be casting the Chilling Mist again, meaning that you're going to be using more FP. This character has a lot of FP, and if you're using the Starlight shots, then yeah, that's nice. But you're taking away that extra percentage that the enemy takes in damage from being frostbitten, and they stay frostbitten for quite some time. So I think that you get more value out of that extra percentage in damage that the enemy takes, instead of just taking it away with the Eleonora's Pole Blade. But then again, it is going to allow you to cause a frostbite again, to proc it again, and it does fairly consistently. So yeah, it's kind of like a concession that you're going to have to make right there. Now, as you were able to see, we only need to get lucky enough to get the Anspur Rapier, and it's not that difficult to get this guy, because more often than not, like 70% of the time you are going to get this guy right in here from any rotten place, temple, or location that you go to. It's also going to be coming out from regular standard locations, and remember that the RNG, it's based on the preference weapon that the character has. This guy has preference on the thrusting swords right in here, so you're going to get this guy fairly consistently. However, if that is not the case, you also have your passive bonuses stuff. Like for example, if you didn't actually manage to get that you were looking for, you're certainly, most certainly, definitely are going to be getting the greases. And if you level the greases up, you can level up this grease right in here. And here we already have the weapon, all of the status ailments on one single weapon that we want to have. So let's animate this guy. We're going to be casting the chilling mist right in here. He's going to get frostbitten, and then we're going to do the poison right in here real fast. He has a little bit more of resistance because we have been poking him for quite a while, so it's going to take a little bit more time for him to get the poison. But then here we're going to be changing this right in here for the rot grease, and then again, like I said, he has a little bit more resistance only because we have been beating him quite a lot. But there you go, all of the 3 status ailments on one single weapon. You do need to level this up so that it stays on for a longer period of time, but also for the status effect to proc sooner. What you want to do is get greases from any campment that you get. You're going to get lots and lots and lots of greases if you're breaking the boxes. The merchants also sell you greases. You only need like 6 of them to level them up, and then gather as many rot greases as you can and save them for the specific boss fights that you want to have them. So this is a little bit more of a conditioned kind of thing, but also if you manage to get like the Anspur Rapier and the Scholar Thrusting Sword, like you can see on the gameplay that I have for you right in here, it's not really difficult to get them. It's just that what it is going to be difficult, it's getting all of these 3 guys at the same time, which is ideally what you want to have. But hey, sometimes you're going to get Rivers of Blood, sometimes you're going to get Reduvia, sometimes you're going to get the Eleonora's Spellblade and what have you. But if you manage to get this combo, you're going to be very, very broken, and you're going to love it, and it is going to be amazing. The one great downside is that you're not going to get like a huge RNG for shields. So my advice is that you're opening your chests to every single location that you can go to, or the armory stands, because those places can give you shields. And ideally you want a shield that doesn't have a skill, so that you can be casting the shielding mists right in here instead of having to swap your weapon. But if you need to swap the weapon, like, it's not really that big of a deal, really. And you don't necessarily need the shield. Like the shield, like I mentioned, I like to have it because you can poke from behind a shield, and because of the buff of the character, you can do so much more consistently. Now, as for the passive bonuses that you want to have when being fighting out there, anything that gives you consecutive attacks, damage or damage resistance. There's also one that heals you anytime that there's poison and rot in the vicinity. That's very, very good as well, because while the post damage functions just on one specific bar that you have after you receive damage, that can make you a little bit more turtley, so that you can be healing just for existing, and remember that there's always going to be poison and rot in the vicinity. So that's one cool thing that you can go about the special buffs that you can get right in here. And we can't really be picky about the talismans, but any talismans that gives you more HP and stamina, or the Godskin stamina talisman that gives you HP recovery for consecutive attacks, you get the gist of everything. Ideally, you already have the base of the build. If you like the content, I like and super appreciate it. And also you that you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You're indeed a gorgeous and beautiful, beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel. You're in the Discord. A beautiful thing. Goodbye.